Mike Silver dropping a little bomb on the 49ers community today. Could Adam Peters be leaving the 49ers post as assistant GM to the Houston Texans, joining D'Amico Ryans as general manager of the Texans? Could he take Trey Lance with him? And some deets, some prospects from the 49ers local pro day coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Then this is the game for you. Download the game. Just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in the game, Ultimate Football GM. All right, we're filling up already in this live episode, as we do to end the week here. Thursday night, if you're watching us on YouTube live. And shout out to all our commuters Friday morning as well that listen to Locked On 49ers first thing every day. I hear so many folks. There was numerous people when we were talking about listeners, Croc, in Oklahoma, in Australia, and Brazil, and I heard from them. It's like, hey, shout out from Brazil. Here we are from Australia. So shout out to all the listeners worldwide that listen to us every day, our everydayers here on Locked On 49ers, and I already see you here in the chat, so we appreciate you. And
I also had somebody say, Croc, you can't mention Brazil and Oklahoma in the same sentence. Like, bro, it's not the same. I'm like, my bad.
For a California kid, it might as well be. Might as well be. There's a good chance I get to Brazil before I get to Oklahoma in my lifetime. Let's be honest.
Tulsa's pretty cool though, not gonna lie.
Is it? You spent some time in Oklahoma?
Yeah, we had took my 7-on-7 kids there. We had a tournament, and actually not bad. Not a bad place.
Folks were good to you. Is there a certain, what is Oklahoma? So what's funny is my dad was born in Oklahoma.
Really?
And the fam moved west to California back in the day. So my dad's an Okie, and but like I don't know what is the thing? Is it barbecue in Oklahoma? Like what's the thing you do when you're
probably out? I feel like all those Midwest states is barbecue.
It's barbecue everywhere, right?
Oklahoma barbecue, Kansas City barbecue, St. Louis barbecue. I feel like all those states right there, or in cities as St. Louis is, and Kansas City, like is barbecue. A
lot of meat, a lot of bread, some domestic beer, and maybe some moonshine.
Oh man, they got different. They got like different flavor moonshine. Arkansas, where I live, so Arkansas, like half the state is kind of like Midwest. The other half of the state is like the dirty South, and I live in the dirty South part of Arkansas. And yeah, they moonshine. Oh man, they're big on all that, just real country stuff. Yeah, it's different. It's different down here. They also got a 49ers chapter here in Arkansas, though. I got to go hang out with them at some point.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. That's what's amazing. There's a 49ers chapter everywhere. And it's so fun to interact with fans and see folks that are listeners of the podcast from all over the world, not just, in San Francisco, not just in the Bay Area, not just in California. Croc's running into people on the streets in Arkansas and Oklahoma. Love that. Richie says, best podcast by far. You're too kind, Richie. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody jumping in the chat right now. What about this little bomb that Mike Silver dropped on the 49ers community today, Croc, talking about Nick Caserio, who's the GM of the Houston Texans, and that he might be on his way out, maybe even heading back to the New England Patriots, and that Adam Peters could potentially be the GM replacement for Caserio in Houston. And of course, I mean, that opens up so many questions about how they're going to build that team. And if you're like the first thing that came to mind for me, Croc, because I've been, I do the Peacock and Williamson show. Everybody come on, subscribe there. Go subscribe on the YouTube channel as well. Hit the link and the thumbs up and the bell and everything for Peacock and Williamson. And go find my latest first round mock draft, by the way, which I had the Texans not drafting a quarterback at number 2 to tease that a little bit. But if this is true and Caserio might not be staying with the Houston Texans after the draft, and that's the report that maybe after the draft, and usually that's when front offices change over a lot of times is post draft, because doing it pre-draft is just kind of weird. You go through the draft season and then you start over with the new staff. And if Caserio does leave, and just stopping there before even talking about the 49ers implications and Adam Peters and potentially Trey Lance as well. If you're an owner, Croc, you own the Houston Texans, and you know that there's going to be a shakeup in the front office. Your team has pick 2 and pick 12. Are you letting the outgoing GM, the lame duck GM that might not be sticking around, are you going to let him pick your quarterback of the future?
Ideally, no, but I feel like that happened recently. Now, I don't know if they picked a quarterback, but I feel like there was a GM that got fired shortly after the draft. Was it maybe the Giants GM before they got the latest one?
Yes. So, but that was they had already spent some time with their quarterback. That was Dave Gettleman, who, by the way, was not a great GM. He's definitely someone that we should have taken on as a shadow drafter. He drafted Daniel Jones, and then I think after either Daniel Jones rookie year, or I think it was this. Oh, no. So Daniel Jones had been in there for at least 2 years, maybe even 3 years before the regime change, and then Brian Daboll came in and brought his Joe Shane, the GM, in there. So they were at least there for
Joe Douglas
years before.
I think that's who it was. I think when Joe Douglas took over the Jets, I feel like the draft had already happened, and then he took over. But I could be wrong.
The 2021 draft with Zach Wilson?
No, he was already GM before then, because he was GM while Sam Darnold was already there.
Yeah.
So he didn't draft a quarterback.
The Sam Darnold draft maybe then.
So he didn't draft a quarterback for whenever he took over. But I think a team they drafted players. They had the draft, and then the GM took over.
Yeah, that didn't work out too well, did it? So
No.
It's probably not a good idea to do that. And the Bears situation was interesting, but they weren't. I don't think they knew they were going to get fired. It wasn't a planned thing, but they all got canned. Because usually when it's a planned exodus, it happens after the draft. If it's not planned and you're just getting straight up fired, then it happens, after the football season ends and before the whole offseason starts. So usually if it's something that happens post draft, then everybody's on board and everyone knows it's going to happen, and it's a smoother transition. And maybe that's why Adam Peters hasn't taken any other jobs, because he wanted his handpicked head coach. And we thought maybe that would be a package deal. So it's not crazy to think that that's something that could potentially happen.
Okay, listen. So here we go. It says here, on June 7th, 2019, Douglas signed a 6-year contract to become the general manager of the New York Jets. So June 7th. So that's,
yeah. Okay. That's definitely a planned thing then. Yeah. It's in the summertime. And so that was that was 2019. So that was after 2018 draft was when Darnold was drafted. So Darnold had already finished his rookie season.
Yeah. And he played with Adam Gase and those guys. Or no. Adam Gase take over? Gosh, I'm so discombobulated. But at the end of the day, the point remains the same. That was a GM that took over after the draft. So if we kind of compare it to Adam Peters and this situation, they could very well have their draft. Ideally, you would like the GM to, pick the guy that he wants, especially if it's going to be a quarterback. But we have seen a scenario where obviously that team already had a quarterback, but they got a new GM well after the draft process. Now, if I'm a GM, if I am Adam Peters and I intend to go to the Texans, get my input at least, because this is a big decision if you take the quarterback number 2 overall.
I mean, that's a huge decision. It's a franchise changer. And if it's a new coaching staff, so they're not going anywhere anytime soon, you hope. And usually ownership is on board with drafting a quarterback. So if they feel it's the right guy, then it's the right guy, and they're going to go that direction. But I think it does lend some credence into the Texans not going the quarterback route. And then my mind immediately, talking about the Houston Texans, I start thinking about how the 49ers built things. And obviously, DeMeco Ryans was there for all of it, linebackers coach, and then ended up becoming the defensive coordinator before now leading the organization and becoming a GM. So next, Croc, I want to talk a little bit about the thought process and what DeMeco Ryans and Adam Peters potentially might have learned from the 49ers that they would take to the Houston Texans and how that might change things for the 2023 draft at the top. And obviously, there's a quarterback that was highly drafted by the 49ers. Could he be in the plans as well in this? Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard us talk about this mobile game app. It's so fun and realistic and really challenging, actually, to build that dynasty, that football dynasty. You think you're the next Bill Walsh if you ever thought you'd make a good GM? Well, now's your opportunity to try to create that dynasty with Ultimate Football GM, where you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your football franchise to build that historic dynasty. You're in charge of hiring and firing the right coaches and coordinators. You want to build your scheme with your exact talent in place that fits that scheme, managing all the finances, player salaries, negotiating terms, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel issues, and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM, completely free and playable offline, play on the go as you want to and when you want to. Best part, Locked On 49ers listeners get a free 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On. So check the game out today. Go to ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. By the way, I want everybody out there to go check out the new Locked On Podcast Network, not just Locked On 49ers, Locked On Podcast Network newsletter. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/newsletters. Get that weekly newsletter in your inbox with links to all the best podcasts, all the best stories, and letting you know what's going on in the NFL world. All right, Croc.
Is the newsletter, are they letting you know what's going on in the NBA world with the Los Angeles Lakers being the 7th seed in the NBA playoffs? I think I'm going to the game Sunday. So if we don't get a live episode, that might be why. I'm just going to drive a couple hours to Memphis. Let's go Lakers. But sorry, I have to just throw that in there.
I'm wondering, like, how much money, like in dollars, how much money does it cost for Lakers ownership to buy off the T-Wolves players to not score for basically the entire fourth quarter to make sure the Lakers can come back and get into the playoffs there?
Listen, I know this is not an NBA show, but the Lakers actually, since the trade deadline, when they got all those new players, had the best defense in basketball. And then it started to get weird when Bron came back. And then we saw early on in that game, Bron was kind of taking plays off a little bit. But fourth quarter, they just buckled down. They buckled down. They played tight when it mattered most. Kind of like Kansas City Chiefs in their offense, right? Kansas City played their offense kind of weird, didn't have the ball for the whole, game of the Super Bowl. Then all of a sudden, fourth quarter, it's like, aha, we are still those guys. And then they played some great offense and they won the Super Bowl. It was kind of like the Lakers, man. When they needed to buckle down, they buckled down.
When they needed the other team to choke, then luckily for them, the other team choked. This is not an NBA podcast. This is not a Lakers podcast, not a Warriors podcast, but the Dubs, I think, might handle those Sacramento Kings. It's going to be a good California series there. Hopefully they're not lighting the beam too much there in Sacramento. So getting back to the 49ers. Actually, let's get back to the Houston Texans a little bit here. So you're the Houston Texans, right? We talked about, okay, so are you going to let an outgoing GM draft your future quarterback, or would you want the GM that's going to be entering the scene to draft that quarterback? So it lends some credence to some mock drafts, including mine, that have the Texans going away from quarterback at pick number 2. I had the Texans, though, trading up still to get a quarterback. And here was my thought process. When I was putting my Texans GM hat on, Croc, I looked at it through the 49ers lens. What do you think DeMeco Ryans learned from the 49ers as it pertains to building a team and building a quarterback and building a franchise with a quarterback? Because in 2017, they famously passed on quarterbacks, right? But it turned out the best quarterback in the NFL was in that draft, and they didn't really even consider that as an option. But their whole plan was to build the team around the defensive line, build that up front, which has been a good plan. And it's been a big reason for their success. D'Amico Ryan's a defensive guy. So when I put my GM hat on for the Texans, my thought was, okay, let's get our Nick Bosa at pick number 2, like the 49ers did, but let's not pass on that quarterback that's super talented that we don't quite know what to do with. So I had him drafting Will Anderson at 2, trading back up from 12 to go get Anthony Richardson. And so that was kind of like putting both of those together. That's the lessons I learned. And I wonder if the Texans see it the same way. But then this whole GM thing, maybe they say, well, wait a second. We got Caleb Williams. We got the kid from North Carolina, May, right? That's in the next draft. Let's build the nest for that quarterback this year. We've got an extra pick next year. We can even trade back this year, get a 3rd first-round pick potentially to go
for sure move up
in the next draft. Right.
I would take that approach, right? And I think we've seen a team kind of Philadelphia Eagles. I think that's what they did, right? Philadelphia Eagles, if I'm not mistaken, they got a couple first-round picks in this draft, right?
Yes. Yeah. They added a first-round pick because last year at this time, they wanted to give Jalen Hurts a shot, but they weren't sure about it.
They were not sure. So that's the approach. I like that. Just for whatever, kind of the quarterback situation right now, would have been nice for them to get a free agent or maybe trade for a guy named Trey Lance. All right, we'll talk about that. But at least, hey, let's go get some legit foundational pieces to add to this defense. They did well in the draft last year. They did go out and get Stingley. They did get Jalen Petrie. They got the linebacker out of Alabama. They got a running back, Damian Pierce. I mean, he is a baller. Like, they added some pieces there. John Mechie, and hopefully he has a speedy recovery from the cancer. He was coming off the ACL, then he had the cancer and everything. But he's a talented receiver. If healthy, we'll see what happens with him. But they are adding some pieces. So why not go ahead and add a bona fide, legit guy like Will Anderson? And then, hey, man, can we move off of this pick and maybe get another first-round pick next year? Because if you can, and you can guarantee yourself, hey, we'll see what happens at the quarterback situation this year. But next year, we know we got some pieces, and we can add Caleb Williams, who I like Caleb Williams more than the quarterbacks in this class. And May, everybody loves May, and they're saying, like, he's the guy, big, athletic, strong arm, stuff like that. So, I mean, that to me would be the best case scenario, almost like Philly did, which Philly, they were like, hey, we're going to set ourselves up, see if we need to trade up. Oh, man, we don't got to trade up because we found the quarterback of the future. And now you continue to kind of just add more pieces to the roster, a team that just went to the Super Bowl. So I would probably go that direction.
I mean,
and trade for Trey Lance. But go ahead.
It seems almost too perfect, right? For the Texans who know. This is what I've always struggled with as it pertains to the Titans, who have Rand Carthon, who came from the 49ers front office, or the Texans, who have the 49ers former defensive coordinator who went against Trey Lance in practice and knows what that looks like. If the 49ers are willing to trade Trey Lance, it doesn't add up that the Texans or the Titans would want to go get Trey Lance. And if the Texans and Titans want to go get Trey Lance, isn't that an indicator the 49ers probably shouldn't be trading Trey Lance?
No. I think it just means, hey, we got a quarterback in Brock Purdy we really like. So if somebody wants to come and get Trey Lance, then we'd be willing to move if the price is right. Like, at the end of the day, at least it feels like, hey, Brock Purdy is our starting quarterback. Like, that's what they're telling us. So if you feel that way, then and the price is right, I wouldn't give him away for just nothing. Because, again, I mean, we've seen the 49ers and the injuries that they've dealt with. And still with Trey Lance, to a certain extent, he's still an unknown commodity, right? Like, you gave up a lot for him, and we still just don't know. So, nah, man, you got to come with it to come get him. I'm not just going to give him away, and I don't have to just to help you out in your situation. Like, no. Right. Now, my homegirl Ashley did DM me and asked, like, hey, man, you got, and we've asked this question before. You got the Titans, you got the Texans. What does it say about Trey Lance if they don't come and get him? But for all we know, maybe the price might just be a little bit too high, or their plans are a little different, like we just discussed with Houston potentially waiting until next year to go and get Caleb Williams and May. Right? Like, if I plan on going to get those guys, maybe I still, depending on if I could get Lance for a 4th. All right, like, look, you guys got Brock Purdy. You don't want Lance. You're making it clear. Hey, look, you got Sam Darnold. He could be your legit backup or whatever. Just give us Lance for a fourth. And at least, he goes to a situation, all right, you got your shot this year. See what happens. If it doesn't work out, let him go. And, all right, we get, May or one of those guys, and we didn't give up much to get him. But I just don't feel like the 49ers are making that easy on Houston or anyone else trying to come and get Lance.
Yeah, no chance. It wouldn't be a fourth. The way that it looks to me, and we've heard some reports about a second-round pick, and the Texans have 2 first-round picks. And if we play this out, and this is indeed the scenario, and Caserio is gonna leave after the draft, and Adam Peters is coming in, and they like Trey Lance enough, and they want to see what is happening there, and he's kind of their Jalen Hurts, right? But the 49ers are sold on Brock Purdy. They like the situation they got, and pick 33, top of the second round. The Texans could offer that. I think that's what it would take, and I think the 49ers would have to start considering it. A fourth, a third, I don't think they should. But a pick just after the first round, maybe they could consider it. Maybe they could even spend a third and get back up with it to get into the first round if they wanted to get a specific player that they were looking at there.
Well, I don't. But if I'm Houston, I'm not giving up that high of a pick or 33rd just to see. Right? Like,
well, they know enough already. They're not just seeing because they already know, and that's the difference. If the Colts traded pick 35, they're doing it based off pre-draft evals, right? But if the Texans do it, they're going off. They know they have
but you still don't know. You might know. He did some cool things in practice at times, and other times things he needs to improve on. But at the end of the day, he has to do it in the game, and he has to show that he can be healthy for an extended period of time. So because of that, I don't know if he's going to stay healthy, and I don't know if he's going to, whatever offense we're trying to build around, whatever the case is, is he going to be out? We don't know, right? So I'm not giving up pick 33.
You don't know if you could never draft a quarterback because you don't know.
We don't know if we're going to be alive on Sunday. I get it. But what I'm saying is I'm not, because you're saying like, oh, they'll know. Like, no, they don't know. They don't know more than any of us. They just know that he's done some cool. We've seen practice throws. We've seen him make special throws.
They know more than we do, at least. They know how he's wired. They've seen him work. They've seen him practice.
Peacock, are you sure? Do you really think that? Okay, the Buffalo Bills watched Isaiah Hodgins for multiple years and was put on a practice squad. Then he goes to the New York Giants and looks like goddamn second coming of Megatron or something.
How about this though? We watched Josh Allen complete 50% of his passes and be awful for 2 years, but they believed in him, and then he became a dude.
I can't guarantee that anybody in the world will be alive Sunday.
But it just works out. You look at the Texans. Okay, we don't love this quarterback that's going to be there for us at 2. Let's say they love one quarterback, he goes 1. That's or we don't love any of the 4, or we like him a little bit, but we want to build it a certain way. So you go a different way. You go get Will Anderson at 2. You get Tyree Wilson at 2. Whoever it is. At 12, you pick somebody else. You move down, maybe even add more picks. You spend pick 33 on Trey Lance because you like him enough that you have enough of a belief that he could be a dude. And like the Eagles last year, you want to see it. And then you do that evaluation again. Then next offseason, either you did great things with Trey Lance or you're in the market again. And now you have a high pick. You have multiple draft picks. You could go up and get one of these quarterbacks. It's probably a better prospect than the quarterbacks that are in this draft. That makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah,
and
it does. But I still don't want to give up 33.
I'm like, for the 49ers, it just doesn't make sense. You could not give up someone as physically talented as Trey Lance that you gave up all that to get. You can't give that up for a 4th. It's just not even close to worth.
Third, if, again, because for the 49ers, they're kind of low-key playing with house money right now in the Trey Lance situation. Because, okay, yeah, you gave up multiple picks, but in those first 2 years of him playing of his contract, well, you went to the NFC Championship both years. So I don't think that there's like this huge loss involved in what they gave up. Yeah, maybe it could have been other players, whatever, but you were still good. And then you found Purdy. So, yeah, I can. It's kind of house money. I can give them up for whatever I feel like giving them up for. But if I'm Houston, I'm not giving up 33.
Yeah, then I would say, okay, Houston, then you don't get this quarterback. That's fine. You just can't. It has to be a considerable return for the 49ers even to consider it. Because the worst possible thing that could happen to the 49ers is they trade Trey Lance and he's great somewhere else. And that's not worth a 4th round pick.
And they're
Just hold
still,
on, just hold on
regardless
to him
of
and let him crash for a fourth pick. Who cares? Like a fourth round pick doesn't even move the needle when you got 11 picks in the draft. You got 3 picks before that fourth round pick even happens.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that are just like, oh, this is all he's going to be, but it's like, man, he's really only played 4 games. So you could see him over a span of a season and start to see some stuff where it's like, thank you, 49ers. We'll pick up that 5th-year option, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Real quick here before we move on to the 49ers local pro day, LKV says, and I saw a couple other people in the chat say, John McClain said Caserio isn't going anywhere. John McClain is one of the beat writers in the Houston Texans area. So yeah, that's possible too, but at the
he's
same
really
time,
plugged in. That was the guy that was on top of the Deshaun Watson stuff for a while. Like,
yes, but I don't know if it was the Watson thing or something else. John McClain famously just a couple years ago, there was some big story, and he's like, I will eat. He said, I think it was, I'll eat the front page of the Houston Chronicle or whatever it is if blank happens.
Yeah,
and
I think it was if Watson gets traded.
And guess what? And blank happened. So
Yeah.
he had to, I don't think he ate the whole front page, but he ate some of it. And so look, this is a blind spot for local beat writers where national guys get insight that local guys don't get. And we see it a lot locally too, right? Where Schefter will break a story and it's like, how did Barrows, how did Mayoko not have this local story? They're there every single day. And Schefter and Rappaport are the guys who are nowhere near Santa Clara, the ones getting this story. So sometimes you're too close to the fire. I don't know, but we'll see. I have no idea what's right, what's not with this, what's really going to happen. But even if the Caserio thing doesn't happen and the Peters thing doesn't happen, I think the Trey thing could still be a possibility with teams like the Titans and the Texans. If those people in the organization still like Trey, but the 49 that are with those new teams still like Trey and believe that would be a way to go for a lot cheaper than spending the second pick in the draft on a quarterback while the 49ers are ready to go to Brock Purdy. It
makes the most sense for Houston, I think.
Next.
Especially since where they are, right? I don't think, the expectation right now for the 49ers, and this is probably what hurt Trey Lance the most, aside from him actually just getting hurt. But the 49ers expectations for him, it felt like really difficult for anybody. And we saw Brock Purdy do it, but really hard to live up to those type of expectations for most people.
It'd probably be best for Trey Lance to go to Houston.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You go to Houston, they don't have those type of expectations. So even if Trey Lance goes there and they go 8-9, people will be like, oh, man, look out for Lance next year, right? Like, that would be the conversation. When he go 8-9 for the 49ers, it's like, he's a bust. You should have never got him.
Even more so than the Titans even. If you went to the Texans, there's zero expectations for you there.
Right.
All right, next, let's talk a little 49ers local pro day. Jake Haener, is he the next Brock Purdy? Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. For your second listen, make sure you check out Locked On NFL Scouting, the newest from the Locked On Podcast Network, with the draft dudes, Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. Find out what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise. Talking draft, talking cap management, talking free agency every Monday through Friday. Find it on the Locked On Podcast Network, on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Also, make sure you're tuned into Peacock and Williamson every day and the new YouTube channel there. All right, Croc. Jake Haener. Is Jake Haener the next Brock Purdy? And look, the 49ers will be in the quarterback market no matter what. Might be undrafted free agent, 7th rounder. They need a camp arm because Brock Purdy's not ready to throw, even if Trey Lance is here. Trey Lance is traded. Maybe that starts to climb up their draft board a little bit. We're talking about a 5th round pick, probably not a 3rd round pick. Is Jake Haener potentially that guy for the San Francisco 49ers?
I think if you ask one Greg Pinelli, my guy Greg, who actually trains Jake Haener a lot, he'd say, heck yeah, man, he's better than Brock Purdy. He'd probably tell you he's better. But, of course, that's his guy. But from everything that he says about him, how smart he is, his preparation. He plays in this wide-open passing offense with their head coach, Jeff Tedford, there. And he's a smart guy, and he's supposed to be like a quarterback guru and do all those type of things. But just smaller in stature, I like Purdy. I think he's slimmer than Purdy, and Purdy's not like the most, the biggest, thickest guy, but they do call him like Baby Bosa, so he kind of like has a thicker lower body a little bit. Yeah. I don't think Jake Haener has that.
No, he's a little smaller. Although he's bigger than Bryce Young, who might be the first pick in the NFL draft. So I think Haener came in 6 feet, like 205.
Okay. No, that's right about where I think.
I think
Bryson
Purdy was like 5 pounds heavier, 210, maybe
212,
212,
I think it was.
214, something like that.
That's
Maybe
why it's weird. I keep hearing people compare Purdy to Jalen Hurts and say they're the same size. I'm like, they are not the same size. What the hell are you talking about?
they're different. They're very different. Yeah. But yeah,
But Haener, just in the sense of movement ability, can move well, like can be crafty there. I think he doesn't have as much creativity outside the pocket as Purdy does, and Purdy was doing a lot of that at Iowa State too. You go back and watch, and you see him doing some things, moving around, sometimes too much. I remember watching one clip, didn't even know it was him. I posted to Twitter like, "What the hell is this quarterback doing?" Like, it ended up being
you saw him
Brock
do that
Purdy.
with the 49ers too, just like bailing out.
Yeah, like why are you bailing out to the left so much?
Turned out okay a lot.
But does very well within doing a lot of that. And I don't think that's Haener's play. But for the 49ers, I think what Haener brings is somebody that just wants to drop back, get the ball out of his hands, and get it to these playmakers. And those are the guys that the 49ers have kind of identified as their type of quarterback, especially late or undrafted. And some of these guys, there are some undrafted guys that they've had that maybe we don't remember because they just never amount to anything. But obviously Nick Mullins comes to mind, and then obviously like Brock Purdy and some of the guys like that. And I think Jake Haener definitely fits that type of mold.
I do think that Jake Haener's getting a little bit overrated locally versus what his, NFL draft stock actually is. Not that he's a bad prospect, but I think he is closer to and he's not Brock Purdy. They're different prospects. They're different players. But I think from a draft stock standpoint, he's played a lot of college football. He's an older prospect. He's actually older than Brock Purdy is.
Yeah, he even said that. He said, I'm older than Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Did you hear him speak about it?
I heard him speak a little bit, yeah. And he's talking about, just growing up, and I think he was talking about a lot about himself. And I know for local fans, you get really excited about the local kids. He's at the local pro day, grew up in Danville, played at Fresno State. People are talking about him as third-round prospect. There's no way Jake Haener sniffs the third round. I mean, I've been following the draft way too long. I'd be completely blown away if Jake Haener gets drafted in the third round. I think he'll be drafted closer to the 7th round than the 3rd round. But
who gets drafted first, Haener or DTR?
DTR, for sure. Yeah, just because traits, he's just got more traits, and that doesn't mean he's a better prospect. But I like both those guys, like in the 5th round range. I don't know where they're actually going to end up going, but I think that's where you start to consider them if you're the 49ers. And then, if because Haener's a little older prospect, not physically going to blow any teams away. No team is going to draft Jake Haener thinking he's going to be a starting quarterback. You didn't think that about Brock Purdy either. That's why he went in the 7th round. But if Haener's there in the 7th round, then you just got to pull the trigger, right? And DTR is kind of a similar prospect. And, maybe it only takes one team to really like a guy, but I don't think either guy goes on day 2. I think they're both day 3 prospects, and I love DTR. I love Jake Haener. I think they're probably the 2 best prospects for the 49ers for what they could potentially need and what they could potentially become for the 49ers. And I really think Haener's probably a guy that Kyle Shanahan's going to like a lot. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson was one of the visits for the 49ers. So they're doing work on these guys.
Yeah, I want to answer this question right here in the chat from our guy Lee. And he says, how could any team bank on Purdy type late round quarterback outlier situation with a complete team? And I don't think they would bank on him being Purdy. I think it's just somebody that can come in and be functional in the offense. And not expecting him, like you said, not expecting Purdy to be what Purdy has turned out to be so far.
They didn't expect Purdy to be Purdy, or they wouldn't have drafted him. They wouldn't have waited until the 7th round to draft him.
So even with Jake Haener, it's like you don't draft him expecting him to just be the starting quarterback, but you do identify him as someone. Can he just run my offense if he has to come in? And that's what you're kind of looking for late. I mean, the Miami Dolphins, they drafted the kid, I want to say out of Kansas State, maybe it was, and he had to play in that playoff game.
Yeah.
Because Tua couldn't play. But, when I'm pretty sure when they drafted him, which might have been the pick before Brock Purdy, it wasn't, hey, man, this guy's got to be a starter. It's like, no, he needed some of the things to go the way they went for Purdy. Tua has to go down. Teddy Bridgewater has to go down. And then, okay, well, we got to play you in the playoffs. And he kind of, didn't do terrible.
Yeah, when you draft the quarterback on day 3, even if it's the 4th round, but especially the 7th round, yeah, Skylar Thompson is the player. Thank you, Lee, in the chat. You draft that player and you're like, hey, maybe he's something, but I hope he doesn't have to play this year. Like, that's what you're thinking when you draft a guy like that. So even to get what Skylar Thompson did and play in a playoff game, and especially to get what the 49ers got out of Brock Purdy, there's no expectation there. That's not what the 49ers would expect if they drafted a 5th, 7th round quarterback this year.
Right. It's just, unless you get DTR, my expectation would be different. And there were some people And I've seen it. I actually saw it on Twitter today. Someone posted it. There were a decent amount of people, and it's hard to know with fans because I think we talked about it with some of the receivers, right? Where everybody's like, "Oh, this is my guy," and it's like they end up having 10 guys. So then when one of the guys hits, you could kind of go back and say, like, "See, I said that this guy would be XYZ, right? Like I told you he would be great." And some people did do that with Brock Purdy, where it's like, "I told you Brock Purdy would be a starter," and it's like, come, like, dude, really? He needed a miracle to become the starter.
I mean, there's a reason he was drafted last in the NFL draft, literally last.
Right. Now, obviously, it's good. The way that it worked out for him and the 49ers, it's like, thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I appreciate you being ready. But, like, for people to kind of foresee that and be like, oh, yeah, he's going to start and he's going to win a bunch of games for the 49ers. It's like, you're just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Oh, right. And you know how fans are, too. I've got people who are fans that live in Ames, Iowa, that are Iowa State fans. And they're hitting me up like, I did not see this coming at all. What the hell? Like, we liked Brock Purdy. And I was like, hey, you know, that QB coach was on with my guy Croc and talked about how he gained 5 miles per hour. Does that change it for you? He's like, no, that's not even it. I didn't see this. This is crazy. Like, even the biggest Iowa State fans didn't see it.
Well, do you know why? Because most situations you go to aren't George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams at left tackle. Like most teams you go to, number one defense in the NFL, is just not that. Like that's typically not your situation that you go into with everybody like right now, healthy, rocking and rolling, ready to go. That wasn't even the 49ers to start the season. Like start the season, there wasn't a Christian McCaffrey, there wasn't even like George Kittle out there, right? Like that wasn't even the case
Trey
start the season.
Trey hasn't had either one of those guys yet.
Right.
I think Kittle's played 1 out of 4 games for Trey so far out of the 4 games.
Yeah.
And none
just the Houston game. And they won that game, but I think just that game.
Yeah, just the Texans game last year, huh?
So, yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying anybody can come into that situation, but I could see how people from Iowa State or fans would say, man, I didn't see this coming. And it's like, well, yeah, most people don't. But you go to a situation like this where it is the most ideal situation for you. Like, dude, it helps. I watched a clip from the game against who the 49ers played first in the playoffs, first round. Seahawks. And Deebo Samuel catches a 5-yard route and takes it 75 yards to the crib. And it was just like, so it's like, that helps.
Right. It wasn't a 75-yard pass. That was a 5-yard pass and a 70-yard run.
Yeah.
I'll talk about some other prospects here at the 49ers local pro day. Shout out to listener Mike, whose nephew was at the pro day. Goes by the name of Caleb Phillips. I believe he started his career in college at Stanford and then ended up at Hawaii. He was wearing number 47 at the local pro days, a 6'5", 230-pound tight end that was at the local pro day for the 49ers. So shout out to Caleb Phillips, potentially future San Francisco 49ers, putting in a workout in front of 49ers brass. And shout out to listener Mike for listening to the pod and letting us know about his nephew, Caleb. Excited to see that. And Croc, awesome. Your guy was at the pro day too, right? Another potential sleeper tight end prospect.
Andre Kelly, you know what I'm saying? Straight out of Stockton. Let's go. Shout out to the Lincoln High School native, which I think Bay Area Winky was, I think he went to Lincoln as well.
Yeah, Stockton.
So went to the same school as our guy Winky, who comes on obviously Winky Wednesdays. But Andre Kelly, he's 6'8", big man for Cal, finished his basketball career. And I ran into him. We worked out together when I was in Stockton last week. And that's when he told me, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be doing the 49ers local pro day. And I'm like, oh, cool. You know, that's pretty cool. So, you know, I got to see him, you know, catch some passes and things and move around and work with some of the young quarterbacks at Elevate 209. Shout out to Vince Carter over there. They're doing a great thing. And, yeah, Andre Kelly, it was good to kind of see him. I saw him kind of in some clips behind the scenes from the 49ers local pro day.
Andre Kelly, rooting for him. He said he's trying to figure out if he wants to maybe try the NFL route. Maybe if he gets a shot, he's going to do that. Or if not, maybe try to go overseas and play some hoops. So good luck to him in his career, whether it goes basketball or it goes football. And Croc, speaking of Stockton, got one last question in the chat here for you from Richard. Croc, why are you not a Kings fan being from Stockton? Just curious.
You know, I get this.
He's a front runner. That's why.
Yeah.
What are you, a Yankees fan? Let's see, probably North Carolina or Duke. Which one is it? Right? And Lakers fan.
Well, I'm a Giant. You see, clearly I'm a Giants fan. I'm a
Giants fan.
49er fan.
Right.
So those are local teams. Well, but what happened was a lot of times you grow up, people become fans of certain teams, not so much because of where they're from, but more because of who's surrounding them at the time. So a lot of times, like people are born in, like Peacock. What teams was your dad fans of?
Oh yeah, my family's always been San Francisco, and I grew up in Visalia, California. It's pretty split, LA, San Francisco. So my wife's actually a Dodgers fan. Her family was Dodgers fans, and it's very split. It's right in the middle of California. A lot of Dodgers fans, a lot of Giants fans.
Right.
We went all San Francisco in my family, so I was a Giants fan. It was easy too, because like 49ers is come on, Rice, Montana, right. Ronnie Lott, they're winning Super Bowls when I'm a kid, and Will Clark, San Francisco Giants, they go to the World Series in 1989, and like that was kind of the year I chose my team, 1989. Both those teams were in their championship, right? So that was pretty easy for me, and the rest of my family was already rooting for them.
All right, so for me, it really was just luckily I asked my mom, I was a mama's boy. Mom, who's your favorite football team? This was me at like 5 years old. She said the 49ers. I was like, all right, I'm a 49er fan. So that was how I became a 49er fan. It wasn't because, I'm from Stockton. And a lot of my childhood, I lived in San Jose as well, so even closer, right? But, my whole family, they're all from San Jose. So, I mean, I'm right there. But my mom, I'm a 49er fan. So I became a 49er fan because I asked her. If I'd asked my dad, he's a Washington Redskin when he was alive. So he passed away. Obviously, they're the Commanders now. I don't, but I would have been a Redskin fan if I'd have asked him. All right. Well, my uncle, I asked him, who's your favorite basketball team? We're watching basketball. He said the Lakers. So I said, okay, Unc, that is my favorite team. I was in like second grade. So I actually first liked Orlando. I liked Shaq and Penny. But then when I moved back to San Jose. I was around my uncle a lot. He was a Laker fan. I'm like, all right, Uncle, you're a Laker fan? I'm going to be a Laker fan. So from the second, third grade, I've been a Laker fan. And that was before they got Kobe Bryant. That was like Eddie Jones. Eddie Jones was originally my favorite player. He wore number 25 that year. He was like a rookie. And then after that, they ended up getting Kobe. So I've been a Laker fan since I was second, third grade.
I can't blame anybody who picks their favorite basketball team because of NBA Jam either, which is a pretty good combo there.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, we got to get out of here. Thanks everybody for joining up the live Locked On 49ers episode on YouTube, and we love you just as much as if you're listening in your car or whatever it is in the audio only podcast. Thanks for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every single day. Make sure you check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show daily, talking about the entire league, myself and former NFL scout Matt Williamson, and everything else the network has to offer. And Croc and I back Monday right here, Locked On 49ers.